My name is Margot, and I'm 31 years old. 3 months ago, at my grandfather's memorial gathering in front of 72 people, my older brother grabbed the back of my neck and shoved my face into the cake my late grandmother used to bake. My mother stood 5 feet away and laughed so hard she had to set her wine glass down. My father raised his voice over the gasps and said, "Sign over the lake house tomorrow morning or don't come back. You don't have a husband. You don't have kids. You don't have kids. You don't need it." My sister-in-law clapped. My nieces clapped because she was clapping. And somewhere in the back of the tent, I heard my own aunt say, "About time someone put her in her place." So I wiped the buttercream out of my eyes, walked to my car, and I made one phone call from the parking lot. Just one. 12 weeks later, the only person in that family still legally allowed to set foot on the lake house property is me. But before I tell you what that call was, you need to understand something. That cake in my face, that wasn't the start. That was the 7th attempt. It was just the first one they did in public. What kind of people rehearse your humiliation as the closing toast at a memorial? And what would you do if the people who raised you decided that because you didn't reproduce, you didn't deserve anything you'd built with your own 2 hands? The text message came in on a Wednesday afternoon. I was on the back porch of my house in Bend, Oregon, sanding down a coffee table I was refinishing for a client. My golden retriever, Honey, was asleep on my work apron, which I'd thrown over the deck planks. My phone buzzed against the railing and I almost didn't pick it up. It was my brother. Memorial for Grandpa Augustus. Saturday, 2 p.m. Mom and Dad's place. Bring a side dish. That was it. No, how have you been? No, I know we haven't talked in 8 months. No, I'm sorry for your loss, too. Just a logistics text like he was reminding the plumber. I set the phone down and stared at it for a long time. Honey lifted her head and looked at me with that particular expression she has, the one where she's trying to figure out if I'm okay before deciding whether to get up. I called my brother back. He answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted, like I'd interrupted something important. "Hey, sis. Got a sec. Just want to make sure it's still happening." He laughed in that way he does. "Of course it's happening. Grandpa just died, Margot." "Why wouldn't it?" I said. "You didn't tell me when he died. I found out from the funeral home website." There was a pause. Then he said, "Well, you know how Mom is. She's been overwhelmed. Don't make this about you, okay?" I didn't make it about me. I just said, "I'll bring a peach cobbler." Grandpa liked peach. And I hung up. I should have known then. Honey put her chin on my knee and I sat there in the sawdust until the sun moved across the deck. I should have called my brother back and said I wasn't coming, but I wanted to believe that grief might soften them, that my grandfather, who used to slip me $20 bills at Christmas and call me his sharp one, might have left enough of a hole in the family that someone would finally look in my direction. I baked the cobbler Friday night. I used my grandmother's recipe, the one written in pencil on the back of an old church bulletin from 1987. I dropped Honey at my neighbor's house Saturday morning, kissed her on the head, told her I'd be back by dark. I drove the 4 hours to Coeur d'Alene with the cobbler buckled into the passenger seat like a child. Their lake house sat on a private road off the eastern shore, the kind of property that had been in our family for 3 generations but that my parents had spent the last decade calling our lake house, as if my grandfather hadn't paid for every brick of it. There were already cars lined up along the drive when I got there. Tents pitched on the lawn. White folding chairs, a string quartet warming up by the dock. A memorial that looked more like an engagement party. I parked behind a row of suburbans and walked up the path with the cobbler in my hands. A woman in a black apron stopped me at the front gate. She had a clipboard. "Name, please," I said. "Margot. I'm his granddaughter." She scanned the list, frowned, scanned again, and then said, "I'm sorry, I don't see you. Are you a +1?" I just stared at her. "I'm his granddaughter," I said again, softer. She got someone on a walkie-talkie. A few minutes later, my sister-in-law came out, smiling like she was about to host a baby shower. "Oh, Margot, sweetie, there must have been a glitch in the planner. Don't worry about it." She made a show of writing my name onto the bottom of the list in pen, like she was doing me a personal favor. "You can put the dessert on the side table by the kitchen. We have caterers, so it might not get served, but the gesture is sweet." The gesture is sweet. I walked the cobbler inside. The side table she pointed to was crowded with cleaning supplies and a stack of folded napkins. I set the dish down next to a bottle of Windex. There was a memorial program propped up on the mantel. Glossy paper, professionally printed. There was a family tree on the back. My grandfather, his wife, their 2 children, my father and my aunt. Then my father's branch with my brother, his wife, their 3 kids. My aunt's branch with my cousin and his wife and their 2 kids. My name wasn't on it. I read the tree 3 times. Not omitted by accident, not put in tiny print at the edge. Just not there, like I'd been pruned. I folded the program in half and slipped it into my jacket pocket. I'd need it later. I didn't know that yet. But something in me knew. I walked outside. Nobody hugged me. My father gave me a nod from across the lawn and went back to whatever conversation he was having with my uncle. My mother saw me, raised her wine glass an inch, and then turned to talk to her cousin. My brother walked past me twice without saying my name. I sat at a table near the dock with 3 women I'd never met, who turned out to be my sister-in-law's college friends from Spokane. They were polite. They asked me what I did. I told them I restored antique furniture and ran my own workshop. One of them said, "Oh, like a hobby?" I said, "No, like a business. I employ 4 people." She nodded and turned back to the others. The string quartet played. The caterers brought out salmon. Toasts began. My father stood up first and talked about my grandfather's legacy, which apparently consisted of passing on values to the next generation, by which he meant my brother. My brother stood up second and talked about how Grandpa Augustus had taught him to fish, which was strange because Grandpa Augustus had also taught me to fish, and I'd been there for most of those trips. My aunt stood up and talked about how the lake house was the heart of our family, and how she was so glad that it would continue to be a place for the children to grow up. She said the word children while looking directly at me. Then my mother stood up. She tapped her fork against her glass and waited for the lawn to quiet. She wore navy. She wore pearls. She looked exactly like the kind of woman who runs a hospital fundraiser. She said, Augustus had a vision for this property. He wanted it to be a place where his grandchildren could raise their families. She paused. Where his great-grandchildren could swim and learn and grow. She paused again. He was clear about that vision. And we have been clear about it too. The lake house has always been understood to be a family inheritance meant for those who are continuing the family. Heads were starting to turn toward me. I felt it before I understood it. And so today, in honor of Dad, we'd like to formally announce that the lake house will be transferred into a trust for our grandchildren. Applause. Genuine, casual, easy applause. From people who knew that the deed to the lake house was in my name. From people who had been at my grandfather's lawyer's office 2 years ago when he sat me down, alone, and said, "Sharp one, this place is yours. Your father can't be trusted with it. Your brother can't either. You'll know what to do." I had paid the property taxes on the lake house every year since. I had paid the contractor who fixed the boathouse roof after the windstorm 2 winters ago. I had paid the propane bill. I had paid the well repair. My parents had never once asked where the money came from. They just assumed, the way they assumed every other thing. I stood up. I didn't plan to. My body just did it. I said, the lake house is in my name. It was left to me. There is no trust to transfer it to. The lawn went completely silent. My brother stood up too. He was already walking toward me before I'd finished the sentence. He said, "You're embarrassing yourself, Margot. Sit down." I said, "Grandpa left it to me. There's a deed. There's a will. I have it." That was when he reached me. My brother is 6'2". He played college football. He works in commercial real estate in Seattle and wears tailored shirts and has the kind of forearms that make people assume he's a good guy. He grabbed the back of my neck. He didn't hit me. He didn't have to. He shoved my face down into the peach cobbler that had somehow appeared on the table next to me. I don't know who put it there. I don't know if the caterer set it out or if someone moved it. I just know my face went into buttercream and stewed peaches and crust, and I heard the wet sound of it and the gasps of the people closest. And then I heard the laugh. My mother's laugh. high and bright and amused like she'd just been told a good joke at a dinner party. I heard her set her wineglass down on a table because she was laughing too hard to hold it. I lifted my head. There was filling in my eyebrow. There was a slice of peach on my collar. My father walked up. He didn't help me. He didn't hand me a napkin. He looked at me with the exact same face he'd used when I was 7 years old and had spilled grape juice on the carpet. He said, "Sign over the lake house tomorrow morning or don't come back. You don't have a husband. You don't have kids. You don't need it." My sister-in-law started clapping. Slow, deliberate, performance clapping. Her daughters, who are 8 and 10 and 5, started clapping with her because they always do whatever she does. Then somewhere behind me, I heard my aunt say, "About time someone put her in her place." She said it loud enough for me to hear. She said it the way you'd say, "That's a nice scarf." Just an observation. Just a fact. I didn't cry. I want you to know that. I didn't cry then. I didn't cry in the car. I didn't cry for the next 11 weeks. There would be time for crying later, and I would do plenty of it, but not in front of them. Never in front of them. I picked up a cloth napkin off the table. I wiped my face slowly. I didn't rush it. I made eye contact with my father while I did it. I made eye contact with my mother. I made eye contact with my brother. Nobody looked away, which surprised me. I'd thought at least one of them would feel something. None of them did. I dropped the napkin on the table. I picked up my purse. I walked across the lawn toward my car. I heard my mother behind me say, just loud enough, "She'll come around. She always does." That was the line I needed. That was the line that decided everything. Because she was right, I always had. Every birthday they forgot. Every Christmas they didn't invite me to. Every time my brother got the down payment and I got, "You should be more grateful for what you have." I always came around. I always forgave. I always made the first call. I always brought the cobbler. I sat in my car for a full minute before I started the engine. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. There was still buttercream in my hair. My mascara had run just a little on the right side. I looked at my own face for a long time. Then I took out my phone and I made one call. I called a woman named Imogen. Imogen had been my grandfather's lawyer for the last 15 years of his life. She was the one who'd drawn up the deed. She'd been at his bedside the week before he died. She had told me just 3 weeks earlier, "If anyone in your family ever pressures you about that house, you call me first. Not them, me." She picked up on the second ring. I said, "It's Margot's. They just announced they were taking the lake house." My brother shoved my face into a cake. My father told me to sign it over or never come back. There was a long pause. Then Imogen said very calmly, "Are you in your car? Are you safe?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Drive to a hotel. Not home, hotel. Tonight. I want you off that property and out of any predictable location for 48 hours while I make some calls. I'm going to get you a meeting Monday morning." "And Margot?" I said, "Yes. Save everything, every text, every email, every voicemail. Take photographs of yourself right now in the car. I mean it, right now. Of your face, of your clothes, of the cake in your hair. I need it." I took the photos. I drove to a hotel in Spokane. I sat on the edge of the bed in a Holiday Inn Express and stared at the wall for a long time. Then I started making lists. I have a system. I have always had a system. When my brother got into trouble at 23 for crashing my dad's truck while drunk, I'm the one who organized the paperwork to keep it off his record. When my mother lost her tax documents 3 years in a row, I'm the one who scanned everything into a cloud folder labeled Mom Backup. When my grandfather started forgetting words 2 years before he died, I'm the one who quietly began documenting everything he said about the family. Every wish he expressed, every name he mentioned in his will. I had a folder on my laptop. It was called Family Records. It had been there for 9 years. Inside it were subfolders for every member of my family. Receipts. I'd paid. Loans I'd made. Texts. I'd paid. Loans I'd made. Texts. I'd screenshotted. Wire transfers. Even photos of canceled checks. I had never told anyone it existed, not even Imogen. I'd built it the way a beaver builds a dam, one stick at a time, without any specific plan, just an instinct that one day I might need it. That night in the Holiday Inn, I opened the folder for the first time in a year. I started reading. By 2 a.m., I had 3 things. The first was a screenshot of a Venmo transaction from my brother, dated 4 years earlier, for $38,000, with the memo line, XS used lifesaver. That was the money I'd given him to cover the down payment on his Seattle condo when his mortgage fell through. He'd never paid me back. He'd never offered. He'd never even mentioned it again. The second was a series of emails between me and my father from 6 years earlier, where he'd asked me to take over the property taxes on the lake house because, in his words, your mother and I have so much on our plates. I had written back, "Are you sure? Legally, this might create issues down the line." And he had responded, "Don't worry about it. We trust you. It's family. Family." The third was a voicemail my grandfather had left me 8 months before he died. He'd called me from the hospital. He'd said, "Sharp one, I changed the will today. The house is yours. Don't let them push you out. They're going to try. Promise me you won't let them push you out." I had saved that voicemail to 3 different cloud accounts. I'd never deleted it, because some part of me had always known. I slept for maybe 2 hours. I drove back to Bend Sunday morning. I picked up Honey from my neighbor. I sat on my back porch with her head in my lap and I waited for Monday. Imogen met me at her office at 8 a.m. She was 64 years old, 5'2", and wore reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She made me a cup of bad coffee and listened while I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. When I was done, she said, 3 things. 1. Your brother committed assault on you in front of 72 witnesses. We are going to press charges. I'm calling the Kootenai County Sheriff this afternoon. 2. Your father has just attempted to coerce you into transferring real property through threats. That is also a crime. We're going to document that. 3. The family tree in that program omits you. Combined with a public announcement of the trust, that suggests they have already been laying groundwork to challenge your ownership. I want to file a quiet title action this week, just to make the deed bulletproof. Are you with me? I said yes. She picked up her phone and made the first call right there in front of me. By Tuesday morning, my brother had been served with a citation for misdemeanor battery. Idaho takes it seriously when an assault is captured on video, and 17 people had filmed parts of what happened. Imogen subpoenaed 3 of those videos. By Wednesday, my father received a cease and desist letter regarding his request that I sign over the property. By Thursday, the quiet title was filed. By Friday, my parents called me. They called 16 times. I didn't pick up. They left voicemails. My mother's first voicemail was sweet. "Sweetheart, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Let's just talk this through as a family." The second voicemail, 2 hours later, was less sweet. "Margot, this is getting out of hand. You're being incredibly selfish." The third voicemail that night was from my father. "You will not destroy this family over a piece of real estate, do you hear me? You will not." I saved every voicemail. I forwarded them all to Imogen. The story would have ended differently if my brother hadn't done what he did next. On the following Tuesday, 10 days after the memorial, my next-door neighbor in Bend called me. She said, "Honey, there's a black SUV parked in your driveway. 2 men in suits. They're knocking on your door. I'm not opening mine. Are you expecting anyone?" I wasn't. I checked my security camera from my workshop. It was my brother and a man I didn't recognize. They knocked for 4 minutes. Then the second man, the one I didn't know, took out a clipboard and started photographing the front of my house. He photographed my mailbox. He photographed my truck in the driveway. Then they got back in the SUV and drove away. I called Imogen. She said, "Send me the footage." She called me back 40 minutes later. The man with the clipboard was a private investigator out of Boise. He was being paid by my parents' lawyer. They were attempting to build a case that I was incapable of managing the property, which is a thing that wealthy families try to do to take real estate away from relatives they don't like. Mental capacity challenges. They were going to argue that I was an unmarried, childless woman who lived alone with a dog and refurbished old furniture for a living, and that I lacked the stability to be the proper steward of the family lake house. Imogen said, "This was always going to escalate, Margot. People who think you owe them don't stop just because you say no. They stop because there are consequences. She filed for an order of protection against my brother that afternoon. She also drafted a countersuit. I sat on my porch and watched the sun set over the pines and held Honey's paw in my hand, and I let myself feel something for the first time in 2 weeks. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. They were going to argue that I was unfit because I didn't have a husband or children. So I was going to make sure that the public record of this case, when it inevitably became public, made very clear what kind of people they were. I started writing. I am not on social media. I have never been. I have a workshop website and an email list, and that is the entire extent of my online presence. But I have a friend named Beatrix who runs a small podcast about women and inheritance, the kind of niche show that has a quiet but devoted audience of about 40,000 listeners, mostly women between 30 and 60. I called her. I told her the story. I told her I had photographs and voicemails and a deed and 72 witnesses. I told her I was about to press charges and file a countersuit and that I wanted to do it on the record with my name attached before my parents could spin it. Beatrix said, "Margot, are you sure?" I said, "I am sure." We recorded the episode the following Tuesday. I told the whole story. The cobbler. The cake in my face. The clipboard. The voicemails. I played the voicemail from my grandfather. I read the line from the program. Great-grandchildren who will continue the family. I did not name my brother. I did not name my parents. I did not name the lake house. I called it a property in the Pacific Northwest. I let the listeners do their own math. The episode dropped on a Thursday morning. By Friday afternoon, it had been downloaded 80,000 times. By Saturday, it was on the front page of a major women's media site. By Monday, it had been picked up by a national morning show that wanted to interview me. I said no. I didn't need a morning show. I had what I needed. By the second week, women I had never met were emailing me their own stories. Daughters who had been disinherited because they hadn't had children. Sisters who had been pressured into signing over real estate. Granddaughters who had been written out of family trees because they were not continuing the family. Hundreds of them. I started a separate inbox just for those emails. I read every single one. My brother's law firm contacted Beatrix demanding a retraction. Beatrix wrote back, "Nothing in the episode is identifying. If your client believes the description applies to him, that is information he is disclosing voluntarily, and I would encourage him to reflect on why." Imogen used that response in court. The hearing was held on a Tuesday in October. The judge was a woman in her late 50s with reading glasses and a flat, unimpressed expression. My brother was there, in a tailored gray suit, sitting next to his lawyer. My parents were there in the second row. My mother had done her hair. My father was in a tie. They all looked at me like I had betrayed them. I felt nothing. Imogen presented the deed. She presented the voicemail from my grandfather. She presented the canceled checks for 9 years of property taxes paid by me. She presented the Venmo screenshot of the $38,000. She presented the cease and desist letter and the lack of response to it. She presented 17 videos from the memorial. The one with the clearest angle showed my brother grabbing my neck. It showed my mother laughing. It showed my father's exact words, audible through the parabolic mic on someone's iPhone. The judge watched the video twice. She rewound it once. She watched my mother laughing again. She did not look at my mother in the second row. She did not look at my father. She ruled from the bench. The quiet title was granted. The lake house was mine, unambiguously, with no surviving claim from any other party. My brother was found liable for battery and was ordered to pay damages of $45,000, plus my legal fees. His misdemeanor charge would proceed separately in criminal court, and based on the strength of the video evidence, his lawyer had already privately advised him to take a plea. He would receive 12 months probation, anger management classes, and a permanent record. As a commercial real estate broker, he would have to disclose this on his license renewals for the rest of his career. The order of protection was granted. He could not come within 500 feet of me or my home. My parents were not parties to the criminal case, but the civil filings, which Imogen had carefully crafted, were now part of the public court record. Any reporter who searched their names would find them. The lawyers at my brother's firm read the filings. He was placed on indefinite leave the following week. My parents were not arrested. My father had not technically committed a crime that could be prosecuted, only one that could be sued for, and I had no interest in suing my parents for money. I had what I wanted. I wanted the deed, and I had the deed. I left the courthouse that afternoon and drove to the lake house. It was the first time I had set foot on the property since the memorial. The string quartet was gone. The white folding chairs were gone. The tents were gone. The white folding chairs were gone. The tents were gone. The dock was just wood. I unlocked the front door with my own key and walked through the empty rooms. My grandmother's quilts were still on the beds. My grandfather's fishing rods were still in the corner of the back porch. The peach cobbler dish I had brought to the memorial had been left on the kitchen counter unwashed, the buttercream crusted on the side. Someone had eaten about half of it. I picked up the dish and carried it outside and washed it in the lake. Then I sat on the dock and watched the water for a long time. I thought about my grandfather. I thought about the last conversation we had, the one where he told me he had changed the will. I thought about how he had said, "Sharp one, you will know what to do." I had not known what to do. I had only known not to fold. That had been enough. In the months that followed, I did some things that surprised even me. I converted the lake house into a quiet retreat, not a business, not a brand. I did not put it on Airbnb. I did not market it on Airbnb. I just made it a place where 4 women at a time could come, for free, for a long weekend, with the only condition being that they were in the middle of leaving someone. A bad marriage, a bad family, a bad business partner. I built it in honor of all the emails I had read after Beatrix's episode. I called it nothing. It had no name. Women found out about it by word of mouth from other women who had stayed there. Imogen, who is 64 and has never asked me for a thing, came up the first weekend to help me organize the kitchen. She brought a chess set and a bottle of bourbon. We sat on the dock and didn't talk much. My mother sent a card at Christmas. She wrote, "I don't know what happened to us. I hope someday you'll let me try again." I read it twice. I did not respond. My father sent nothing. My brother sent a letter through his lawyer drafted carefully in which he formally apologized for the assault. I sent it to Imogen, who archived it. I did not respond to that either. My aunt, the one who'd said about time someone put her in her place, died of a stroke in February. I did not attend the funeral. I am told no one mentioned my name there. That suited me fine. I had stopped needing to be mentioned. There is a thing people don't tell you about walking away from a family. They tell you it will be lonely. It is not lonely. The loneliness I felt for 31 years sitting at tables where no one looked at me, that was lonely. This, the quiet of my back porch with honey at my feet, and the sound of wind in the pines and the knowledge that no one is going to text me to ask me for something, this is not loneliness. This is a clean kind of silence. It is the silence that comes after you have stopped clapping along to a song you never liked. I think about my grandmother sometimes, the woman who wrote the peach cobbler recipe in pencil. She used to tell me when I was very small, "Sharp one, you'll meet a lot of people in your life who will tell you what you owe them. Make sure you know the difference between what you owe and what they're just hoping you'll give." I did not understand her then. I understand her now. I do not believe in revenge as a complete philosophy. I believe in receipts. I believe in deeds. I believe in voicemails saved to 3 different cloud accounts. I believe in lawyers who pick up on the second ring. I believe in cameras over the front door. I believe in writing things down. And I believe, more than anything, that if a family is willing to humiliate you in front of 72 people for refusing to disappear quietly, they were never your family in the first place. They were just people who shared your name and assumed that was enough to take what you'd built. If this story spoke to something in you, if you have ever sat at a table where no one said your name, leave a comment. Tell me about it. I read every single one. And if you have not yet made the call, the one you know you need to make, the one you have been putting off, this is your sign. Make it. The sharp one inside you already knows the number. I've thought a lot, in the months since that memorial, about how things might have gone differently. Not for me. For them. Because the truth I keep coming back to is that nothing my family did to me on that lawn was an accident. It was the harvest of seeds they had been planting for 31 years, and they were genuinely shocked when the crop came in. My brother shoved my face into that cake because no one had ever told him no, not once. Not when he wrecked the truck, not when he borrowed the $38,000 he never paid back, not when he skipped Grandpa's hospital visits and let me sit there alone. My parents had spent his entire life teaching him that consequences were something other people had. And then, one Saturday afternoon in October, in front of 72 witnesses, the bill came due. That is what we forget. Cause and effect does not skip generations. It does not skip the favored child, it only waits. My mother laughed because she had been laughing at me for so long it had become reflexive. She did not invent that cruelty in the moment. She had practiced it at every birthday I spent alone, every Christmas where my chair was the one near the kitchen, every time she introduced my brother as her son and called me and Margot. A woman doesn't laugh at her daughter's humiliation unless she has already been laughing for decades, quietly in places her daughter couldn't hear. What I want to say to anyone watching this is something I had to learn the hard way. Your decency is not a weakness. Your patience is not a flaw. The years you spent forgiving them, paying their bills, showing up with peach cobblers, those were not wasted years. They were the years that built the spine you would eventually need. You cannot stand up to people like mine without first understanding in your bones that you tried. You tried for a long time, and when you finally stop trying, you do it with a clean conscience because you know exactly what you gave them and exactly what they did with it. The strength I needed that day did not come from rage. Rage is loud and it burns out fast. The strength came from 9 years of quietly saving receipts. From a voicemail I refused to delete. From a lawyer's number I had memorized. From the small, unglamorous work of being honest with myself about who my family actually was, even when I kept hoping they might still surprise me. If there is one thing I want you to take from this, it is that the call you need to make is not a call of anger. It is a call of accounting. You sit down. You add up what you gave. You add up what they took. You stop pretending the math will balance itself. And then, with a steady hand, you do what my grandfather told me to do. You become the sharp one, not the cruel one, the clear one, the one who finally knows the difference between family and people who just share your name.